So, Andom, you are running in the 16th district in New York. You're challenging Representative Eliot Engel, longtime Democratic congressman. We should also say that you're running in a primary that includes Jamal Bowman. We have interviewed Jamal on this program. Give us your sense of the 16th district in New York. What can you tell us about this district?
Yeah, well, it's a pretty fascinating district. It's extremely socioeconomically and racially diverse. You have the northern parts of the district, which include some of the most affluent parts of the country, Scarsdale, Ardsley, Hastings, and also within Westchester is my hometown, Mount Vernon, which up until a couple of years ago was one of only 5 cities in America where the median black income was higher than the median white income. We also, in this district, it stretches across 2 counties, Bronx and Westchester County. So within the Bronx, we have the Northwest Bronx, which includes Riverdale, relatively affluent, pretty diverse. Then the Northeast Bronx, areas like Wakefield, Williamsbridge, Baychester, which are heavily Caribbean, first, second generation American and immigrant population.
So this is a very, this sounds like an incredibly diverse district. And has it changed over the years? I mean, I'm curious as to, where Engel's strength comes from. Or are we looking at a situation where in some respects, maybe the district has evolved over the years and there's been a lot of inertia that has kept Engel in?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of both, to be honest. The district is majority people of color, between 60-65% people of color, and that is more than it was, when Engel first got in office in 1989. He does have some strongholds in Riverdale and in some parts of northern Westchester, but it really is the inertia that you were speaking about. There's about 9.8% of people turned out in the last election in 2018. So you have a vast majority of people who are not even engaged in the political process, who are not even aware of what Representative Engel is doing for the district. And so part of our efforts in this campaign is to be able to engage parts of the community which have not been engaged. It's to mobilize people and hopefully get that number closer to about 13-14%.
Okay, so give us a sense of Engel. I mean, you're challenging. We're doing this series. There's a lot of primary challenges this year of sitting Democratic Congress people. A lot coming from the left. And frankly, those are the ones we're interested in. Give us a sense of, where Engel, in your mind, is out of step with where the party is headed, or where he's out of step with your district.
Definitely. Like many of the Democratic establishment, Eliot Engel takes corporate money and is beholden to special interests. But I think really the main thing that distinguishes Eliot Engel from a lot of the other Democrats that we see in Congress is, as chair of House Foreign Affairs, he is one of the most militaristic and hawkish Democrats that we have in Congress. And that is really one of the things that actually motivated me to run and jump in this race. I was a special education teacher in New York City. And when I taught in the Bronx, my 11-year-old students had to walk through metal detectors up 3 flights to a floor that was crammed with 500 students where there was only one social worker. And myself as a first-year teacher, I had to pay for paper to give my kids worksheets. So we were severely lacking funds in our school, yet Eliot Engel, as someone who's been there for 30 years, has always been willing to fund military adventures in the Middle East, which we know have really been destructive for countries in the Middle East as well as to our own soldiers. Eliot Engel voted for the Iraq War in 2003. When I was in high school marching against it, he voted against withdrawing troops from Afghanistan in 2011, contributed about $45 billion a year to the war over there. And he's also been always willing to give military aid to many countries that have committed human rights abuses. So not only is it a financial and fiscal thing, which is problematic when we consider how underserved parts of our district are, but it's also a moral issue. And that's really why I'm in the race.
It's fascinating because you don't hear, and Engel is somebody who I agree with your assessment in terms of where he is on foreign policy. I think it's a real problem. There is a segment of the Democratic Party that is incredibly hawkish, and this is a time where we're going to have to come in and repair a lot of damage that has been done over the course of the past 4 years. Hopefully, it can be done. Give me a little bit of sense of your background. You said you were a special education teacher. It's fascinating to me. Both of his challengers in this district, Engels, are educators. I mean, what do you think? What is
he himself is an educator?
Oh, so what is that about? I mean, is that just a coincidence, or is there a relationship that you have with, I don't know, the community because you're a teacher that in some way informs your desire to run and get full on in public service in this way?
Yeah, it's a really great question. I mean, I think it's just a crazy coincidence that there are 3 educators in the race. Particularly even with me and Jamal, black male educators are 2% of the entire teaching population. So it's a really crazy coincidence that we're both in it. But in terms of being a special education teacher, I think it directly leads to the type of progressive thinking, which is what we need in office right now. As a special education teacher, the type of pedagogy we're taught is around being able to make curriculum accessible to neurodiverse individuals, to students who have been shut out of the traditional classroom. And so a lot of what we do is, again, sort of widening the base and widening the foundation for our students in a similar way that I think progressives are attempting to do that with society and the welfare state right now. But moreover, just teachers in general, we have to interact with so many diverse stakeholders in order to ensure that our students are developing academically, are developing socially, are on the pathways to success. We have to engage with not only the students themselves, but their parents, their families, their coaches, people in the community who are influential with them, whether it be religious leaders or whoever it is. So, we're just always engaging with diverse stakeholders, and I think that's a natural transition into Congress. But, to be honest, for me, this was never like a plan I had 10 years ago when I started teaching. The reason why I'm here is because of the exigencies that we're facing in our community and the fact that Representative Engel is not appropriately dealing with them.
You basically outlined one of the reasons why you were running, or one of the primary reasons why you're running against Eliot Engel, and you told us about your experience as a special needs teacher in New York City and how there's skills that you develop and sensitivities, I think, that you develop that lead you and push you into a desire to represent the 16th district. We talked about how diverse a district it is, and you are, is it first generation of immigrant parents?
Exactly, yeah.
And you had a very sort of a varied experience growing up in that district.
Yeah, definitely. I grew up in Mount Vernon, which I mentioned before is a very diverse city. I went to a Jewish Y growing up that was 50% black and a couple blocks away from where Betty Shabazz lived. So that just sort of highlights the diversity of the community. But, I went to a public school that was a blue ribbon school, great public school. The middle schools in Mount Vernon when I was growing up are not as good as the elementary schools. So my teachers encouraged me to apply to the private schools in Riverdale, in a more affluent area in the district. And I ended up transitioning to a school in Riverdale for middle school called Fieldston, which, was a very expensive private school. I now was only one of, six or seven people of color. And even more so than racially, it was really a huge class difference that I was made aware of. I had always been aware of sort of the international differences in class and socioeconomic status because my parents were from Eritrea, and I had visited Eritrea, and I could tell the difference between Eritrea and America. But I'd never really seen at that point in my life, just the difference between Mount Vernon and this area of Riverdale. So that really just awoken me at that time to the stark class differences that existed only within a couple miles apart.
So, Andom, I am at andomfornewyork.com, your website, ANDOM FORNY.com, and looking over your issue set. Foreign policy for the people. We spoke about that briefly in the last segment. Tell us from a priority perspective, which of these? I mean, you have you're listing a lot of the progressive policies that we talk about. Housing, I see, is up there. What for you? What are these? What are the priorities?
Yeah, so I think all of these issues are intersectional, and to be honest, they're internationalist in the sense that we can't distinguish them from what's going on around the world. So it's not necessarily that there are specific individual policies that are priorities, but we have a priority of securing economic justice. And how do we secure economic justice? Well, we have to support a homes guarantee, a federal jobs guarantee, single-payer Medicare for all, fully funding education, increasing union density. We support dismantling the military-industrial complex and being able to pursue the necessary multilateralism and diplomatic engagement for a global Green New Deal. So everything that we have on the site is really interrelated. So there are certain priorities that we have in terms of the end goal and the humanizing mission that we have. Like I said, securing racial justice or the global Green New Deal and the multilateralism required for it. But it's not specifically just like, it's only foreign policy. It's only LGBTQ rights. All of these things are interrelated.
What most animates you? I mean, I think that obviously we need a large push, but when you anticipate being seated as a congressperson from the 16th district, if they give you a choice of committees, which committee are you going to gravitate towards?
Yeah, I think just because of my own experience as a professional and also as an activist, I think it would have to be education and labor or foreign affairs. I think just because of my background, that's where I would lean towards.
What are the biggest challenges to labor, do you think, in this country?
Oh my God! I mean, if we just look at how union density has declined over the last 40 years. I mean, it's a huge issue. It's one of the things that has contributed to wage stagnation and the fact that income inequality is at the highest point it's been in 50 years. So, when we're talking about things like the PRO Act, repealing Taft-Hartley 14B.
Tell folks what the PRO Act is. I'm not sure that everybody's familiar with it.
Yeah, so Protecting the Right to Organize Act is an important bill that is in the House that would ensure that workers have the right to organize, that their ability for first contract negotiations aren't denied, prevents against union busting, prevents against right to work for less. And it's something that is essential, really, to being able to guarantee that workers have the right to organize in unions and guarantee their bargaining power. And we've seen that when union density is increased, and New York actually has the second highest union membership rate in the country. It's about double that of the national average, which is 10%. In New York, it's about 20%. When you see that wages are higher, that inequality is lessened, and that should be an ultimate goal that we have.
Well, what do you make of the teachers have been some of the most active over the past couple of years in terms of using their labor as a lever? Some trace it back to the Chicago teachers strike in 2011, I think it was. And then, of course, we had the Red State Revolt in 2018, where we saw teachers in red states across the country that didn't even have unions per se, more like associations, if you will, rise up against states that were cutting their budgets, particularly on behalf of their students. Give me your sense as to why teachers have been sort of the vanguard of a resurgent labor movement.
So I think it's twofold. I think part of it is that teachers are on the front lines of seeing what public disinvestment and privatization of education, how that affects not only their students, but how it affects them and their ability to organize and advocate for themselves as workers and for their students. So I think that's part of it. I think the other part of it is that we see that, in so many states, public sector workers don't have the right to organize. So we're seeing the contradiction that is existing within the classroom, and the classroom as a site of labor negotiation and a site of labor contestation, but at the same time, teachers aren't able to effectively organize. In 6 southern states, I believe that public school teachers aren't able to form a union. So that's one of the reasons why we support the Public Sector Freedom to Negotiate Act, and why it's very important that all public sector workers, but teachers in particular, have the right to organize.
So, Andom, there's a template out there for unseating sitting Democratic Congresspeople who have been longtime Congresspeople. Obviously, AOC, that formula, there's an attempt across the country, I think, to replicate it in many respects. What's it going to take for you to win this district, or this primary, I should say?
Yeah, so, we've had the good fortune of any time we've been able to get in front of people and speak about our campaign, get people on the website, and they can see our fully fledged platform and vision, folks tend to be very excited. The challenge is being able to get out there to as many Democrats in the district as possible. So we've had a good fortune, again, as I said, of when people are seeing us, the message tends to resonate with them. And through that, we've been able to build a pretty strong volunteer base that is going out in all different parts of the district and communicating with people. I'm pretty lucky in that I have so many students, former students actually, who are really excited about the campaign and have been very, very active in going door to door and engaging with people in the district. We also were very serendipitously, I was featured in Humans of New York about 3 weeks ago, which really, sort of blew up the campaign, and it was basically broadcast on social media to close to 30 million people about what we're trying to do. So that really just doubled our volunteer base that we already had, which was pretty strong. So really it's just about sort of what you were saying. We just have to go door to door, engage with as many people as possible. The district here the median age is a little bit older than AOC's district. So just being able to get in front of people and engage with them directly, it has a huge, huge impact.
Andom Ghebregiorgis, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.